Well, hello and welcome back. I finally got this cute little Star Wars looking microphone to work. I don't need to talk very loud, which is really nice. Not that I've been yelling, but. Or maybe I have been yelling. So hopefully it's not too loud and it sounds good. Wow, what a time. I just got this book called Bird by Bird. And we'll see how it goes. I don't know how it'll go, but I'm excited that I got it. It sounds cool. My friend Michael, who passed away, loved birds, so happy to be reading about them. It's about writing, and then I just had this thought, maybe I'll try to write a Jane Austen style book? Maybe I'll try my hand at writing? Because I've learned so much about writing from reading these books? I think I need to read more, though. This time period. I do want to read Little Women, and I do want to read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I do want to read Jane Eyre, and I do want to read Wuthering Heights, and I do want to read Moby Dick. And I do want to, there's so many. I kind of want to read Camilla, and I kind of want to read Cecilia. I want to read some Fanny Burney. So, but for right now, Emma. Right now we're reading Emma. And we just got to hear a lot from Miss Bates. Miss Bates? Look what else I got. I got a dictionary. I got a dictionary thesaurus. I had to make sure like the word solicitude was in there and the word languid was in there. And they were all in there. So I feel like it's going to be good. I won't get to hear the pronunciation, but I'll do my best with the pronunciation. But I got a dictionary. I feel smarter just having it near me. I'll still have the phone just to look up ideas. But so we just got to hear from Miss Bates, my Spanish teacher in high school for my senior year, I think was Senora Bates, but it was just Bates. But my Spanish teacher being Senora Bates, you had to say Bates. Okay, so we just met Miss Bates, who is a character. Her and Mr. Woodhouse are my favorite. And Jane Fairfax is her niece. Jane Fairfax is Mrs. Bates' niece. And the infamous Jane Fairfax letter that Mrs. Bates did paraphrase, but then probably read. And then Emma just had to leave. She simply had to leave and couldn't hear the letter. That's right. She was able to escape the letter itself. Trying to escape things that are important to other people, but she thinks she's the princess of the town, so she has to move along, and she doesn't really like talking about Jane Fairfax. She's already got some prejudices against Jane Fairfax. So now we are on, not chapter 11, chapter 2, volume 2, chapter 2. Oh wow, Jane Fairfax was an orphan. Oh no. The only child of Mrs. Bates's youngest daughter. Mrs. Bates's youngest daughter. Oh my gosh, I'm having deja vu. Whoa. That's so freaky deaky. It means I'm on the right path. Mrs. Bates's youngest daughter is sisters with Miss Bates. Okay. And Jane Fairfax is her child. Got it. The marriage of Lieutenant Fairfax of the th Regiment of Infantry and Miss Jane Bates had had its day of fame and pleasure, hope and interest. But nothing now remained of it, save the melancholy remembrance of him dying in action abroad. Of his widow sinking under consumption and grief soon afterwards. And this girl. Consumption is tuberculosis, right? We used to do a thing in Tai Chi where we would turn your head left and right to prevent consumption. And you'd have to do it really slow. And I think that means tuberculosis? What if it's in the dictionary? What if it's in the dictionary? It feels good to flip through a dictionary. I was flipping through the dictionary at the Barnes & Noble, and I was like, this feels good. I feel so smart. Consumption. C-O-N. Okay. There's a lot of C-O-M words. Okay. C-O-N-D. C-O-N-F. C-O-N-G. I can see this is going to be a problem already. O-P-Q-R-S-T-U. Consumption. Oh my god. Tuberculosis! It says in there progressive bodily wasting away. Also tuberculosis. Whoa, the act of consuming or using up, or the use of economic goods. Whoa. Number one definition is the progressive bodily wasting away, and also tuberculosis. Whoa. Cool. Who needs a gadget and a gizmo aplenty? And who's its and what's its galore? Thingamabobs, we don't need them. But who cares? No big deal. I want more. Okay. And the dash and this girl. By birth, she belonged to Highbury. And when at 3 years old, on losing her mother, she became the property, the charge, the consolation, the fondling of her grandmother and aunt. There had seemed every probability of her being permanently fixed there, of her being taught only what very limited means could command, and growing up with no advantages of connection or improvement, to be engrafted on what nature had given her in a pleasing person, good understanding, and warm-hearted, well-meaning relations. Engrafted, like a graft, like a skin graft. E-F-G-L-M-N-N. It's a search, and it makes me think that I'm going to learn it better because I have to search for it. Engrafted. It's not in the dictionary. Engraving, engrave, engram. English. It's not in the dictionary. Should we see if it's on the Googs? Ugh, I hate to rely on the Googs for everything. Engrafted. And I spell it wrong. Okay. Engraft. Another term for a past tense of graft. That's my least favorite. A piece of living tissue that's transplanted surgically. Oh, a transplant. Oh, okay. Like engrafted? Like a transplant? Okay. Okay. No advantages of a connection or improvement to be engrafted on what nature had given. Oh, okay. She already is a pleasing person, good understanding and warm-hearted and well-meaning. Okay. But the compassionate feelings of a friend of her father gave a change to her destiny. Ooh, destiny. This was Colonel Campbell, who had very highly regarded Fairfax as an excellent officer and most deserving young man, and father had been indebted to him for such attentions during a severe camp fever as he believed had saved his life. These were claims which he did not learn to overlook, though some years passed away from the death of poor Fairfax before his own return to England put anything in his power. When he did return, he sought out the child and took notice of her. He was a married man with only one living child, a girl about Jane's age, and Jane became their guest, paying them long visits and growing a favourite with all. And before she was 9 years old, his daughter's great fondness for her, and his own wish of being a real friend, united to produce an offer from Colonel Campbell of undertaking the whole charge of her education. It was accepted, and from that period Jane had belonged to Colonel Campbell's family, and they lived with him entirely, only visiting her grandmother from time to time. Community, you guys. We need community. I just heard some person from China, I don't remember his name, talking about how that's the difference between America and China. China, there's generations of people who will, besides the government, it's like separate from the government, your community. And we don't have that in America. And I had to think about that. It's very much individuation, individual. I don't even know my neighbors very well because they're mean. But this feels like very much the time where you kind of had to hope for the goodness of other people and they would show up for you, and just some colonel that was in the Lieutenant Fairfax's thing was like, yeah, I'll take charge of her. That's like nice. That's nice. It's cool to learn a little bit more about Jane Fairfax. It's nice. I just, have heard about her from Emma's point of view. And obviously Miss Bates loves her, but there's a little bias there, huh? The plan was that she should be brought up for educating others. Oh, a very few £100, which she inherited from her father, making independence possible. To provide for her, otherwise, was out of Colonel Campbell's power. For though his income by pay and appointments was handsome, his fortune was moderate and must be all his daughter's. But by giving her an education, he hoped to be supplying the means of respectable subsistence hereafter. Such was Jane Fairfax's history. She had fallen into good hands, known nothing but kindness from the Campbells, and been given an excellent education, living constantly with right-minded and well-informed people. Her heart and understanding had received every advantage of discipline and culture. And Colonel Campbell's residence being in London, every light her talent had been done full justice to by the attendance of first-rate masters. That's cool. I'd love to have first-rate masters teaching me everything. Come teach me piano at my house. Her disposition and abilities were equally worthy of all that friendship could do, and at 18 or 19 she was, as far as such an early age can be qualified for the care of children, fully competent to the office of instruction herself. But she was too much beloved to be parted with. Neither father nor mother could promote, and the daughter could not endure it. The evil day was put off. It was easy to decide that she was still too young, and Jane remained with them, sharing as another daughter in all the rational pleasures of an elegant society and a judicious mixture of home and amusement, with only the drawback of the future, the sobering suggestions of her own good understanding, to remind her that all this soon might soon be over. The affection of the whole family, the warm attachment of Miss Campbell in particular, was the more honourable to each party from the circumstance of Jane's decided superiority both in beauty and acquirements. That nature had given it in feature could not be unseen by the young woman, nor could her higher powers of mind be unfelt by the parents. They continued together with unabated regard, however, till the marriage of Miss Campbell, who by that chance, God, does that ever happen to you guys, where you're reading and then all of a sudden you're like, how do I get to the next sentence? Like, it feels like I'm skipping full sentence. Reading out loud is crazy. Reading is crazy. They continued together with unabated regard, however, till the marriage of Miss Campbell, who by that chance, that luck which so often defies anticipation in matrimonial affairs, giving attraction to what is moderate rather than to what is superior, engaged the affections of Mr. Dixon, a young man, rich and agreeable, almost as soon as they were acquainted, and was eligibly and happily settled, while Jane Fairfax had yet her bread to earn. This event had very lately taken place. too lately for anything to be yet attempted by her less fortunate friends towards entering on her path of duty, though she had now reached the age which her own judgment had fixed on for beginning. She had long resolved that 21 should be the period, with the fortitude of a devoted novitiate? Whoa. Is that like a novice? Novitiate. Novitiate. HIJKLMNOP LMNOPQRSTUV. Novitiate. See, it's not going to tell me how to pronounce it, though. Novitiate. Oh my god, it's in here. The period or state of being a novice. A house where novices are trained. Novitiate? Novitiate. I feel like I'm just saying the word shit the whole time. No, I just want to know how to pronounce it now. Novitiate. 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 That sounds crazy to my head. With the fortitude of a devoted novitiate, she had resolved at 21 to complete the sacrifice, and retire from all the pleasures of life, of rational intercourse, equal society, peace, and hope, to penance and mortification forever. The good sense of Colonel and Mrs. Campbell could not oppose such a resolution, though their feelings did. As long as they lived, no exertions would be necessary. Their home might be hers forever, and for their own comfort they would have retained her wholly. But this would be selfishness. What must be at last had better be soon. Perhaps they began to feel it might have been kinder and wiser to have resisted the temptation of any delay, and spared her from a taste of such enjoyments of ease and leisure as must now be relinquished. Still, however, affection was glad to catch at any reasonable excuse for not hurrying on the wretched moment. She had never been quite well since the time of their daughter's marriage, until she should have completely recovered her usual strength. They must forbid her engaging in duties which, so far from being compatible with a weakened frame and varying spirits, seemed, under the most favourable circumstances, to require something more than human perfection of body and mind, to be discharged with tolerable comfort. Whoa. Require something more than human perfection of body and mind. I feel like her and Emma are on like really similar paths. Like Miss Taylor just left, and then Jane grew up with Miss Campbell, and now they're both gone, but Jane got really sick. Like she actually cared about it more. Oh, that's sad. No, Emma cared for Miss Taylor. Okay. I'm trying to impose something smart, and it's not there. With regard to her not accompanying them to Ireland, she should have gone to Ireland. Her account to her aunt contained nothing but truth, though there might be some truths not told. Oh, it was her own choice to give the time of their absence to Highbury, to spend perhaps the last months of perfect liberty with those kind relations to whom she was so very dear, and the Campbells, whatever might be their motive or motives, whether single or double or treble. treble clef. Music. Does that mean 3? Treble clef? Huh. I never thought of that. I forgot what that word meant. Gave the arrangement their ready sanction, and said that they depend more on a few months spent in her native air for the recovery of her health than on anything else. Certain it was that she was to come, and that Highbury, instead of welcoming that perfect novelty which had been so long promised, Mr. Frank Churchill must put up for the present with Jane Fairfax, who could bring only the freshness of a 2 years' absence. Emma was sorry. Semicolon. Interesting sentence with a semicolon. Emma was sorry to have to pay civilities to a person she did not like through 3 long months. To be always doing more than she wished and less than she ought. Why she did not like Jane Fairfax might be a difficult question to answer. Mr. Knightley had once told her it was because she saw in her the really accomplished young woman which she wanted to be thought herself. Well, interesting. A little jealous Emma. I don't know, have they ever met? Has Emma and Jane met before? I must have missed it. Mr. Knightley's got a point. And though the accusation had been eagerly refuted at the time, I'm sure, there were moments of self-examination in which her conscience could not quite acquit her. But she could never get acquainted with her. She did not know how it was, but there was such coldness and reserve, such apparent indifference whether she pleased or not. And then her aunt was such an eternal talker, and she was made such a fuss with everybody. And it had been always imagined that there was to be so intimate because their ages were the same. Everybody had supposed they must be so fond of each other. These were her reasons. She had no better. It was a dislike so little just, every imputed fault was so magnified by fancy, that she never saw Jane Fairfax the first time after any considerable absence without feeling that she had injured her. You're the one that's going to have to sleep with yourself at night, Emma. You're going to have to live with the bed you made. You're going to have to face yourself. And now, when the due visit was paid on her arrival, after 2 years' interval, she was particularly struck with the very appearance and manners which for those 2 whole years she had been depreciating. Jane Fairfax was very elegant, remarkably elegant, and she had herself the highest value for elegance. Her height was pretty. Her height was pretty, just as almost everybody would think tall, and nobody could think very tall. Her figure particularly graceful, her size a most becoming medium, between fat and thin, though a slight appearance of ill health seemed to point out the likeliest evil of the two. Emma could not but feel that all this, and then her face, her features, there was more beauty in them altogether than she had remembered. It was not regular, but it was very pleasing beauty. Her eyes, a deep grey, with dark eyelashes and eyebrows, had never been denied their praise, but the skin, which she had been used to cavil at as wanting colour, had a clearness and delicacy which really needed no fuller bloom. It was a style of beauty of which elegance was the reigning character, and as such she must, in honour, by all her principles, admire it. Elegance, which, whether of person or of mind, she saw so little in Highbury. There, not to be vulgar, was distinction and merit. In short, she sat, during the first visit, looking at Jane Fairfax with twofold complacency. The sense of pleasure and the sense of rendering justice was determining that she would dislike her no longer. When she took in her history, indeed her situation, as well as her beauty, when she considered what all this elegance was destined to, what she was going to sink from, how she was going to live, it seemed impossible to feel anything but compassion and respect, especially if To every well-known particular entitling her to interest were added the highly probable circumstance of attachment to Mr. Dixon, which she had so naturally started to herself. In that case, nothing could be more pitiable or more honourable than the sacrifices she had resolved on. Emma was very willing now to acquit her of having seduced Mr. Dixon's affections from his wife, or of anything mischievous which her imagination had suggested at first. If it would love, it might be simple, single, successless love on her side alone. She might have been unconsciously sucking in the sad poison while a sharer of his conversation with her friend, and from the best, the purest of motives, might now be denying herself this visit to Ireland, and resolving to divide herself effectually from him and his connections by soon beginning her career of laborious duty. Upon the whole, Emma left her with such softened, charitable feelings as made her look around in walking home and lament that Highbury afforded no young man worthy of giving her independence, nobody that she could wish to scheme about for her. These were charming feelings, but not lasting. Before she had committed herself by any public profession of eternal friendship for Jane Fairfax, or done more towards a recantation of past prejudices and errors, than saying to Mr. Knightley, "She certainly is handsome. She is better than handsome." Jane had spent an evening at Hartfield with her grandmother and aunt, and everything was relapsing much into its usual state. Former provocation reappeared. The aunt was as tiresome as ever. More tiresome because anxiety for her health was now added to admiration of her powers, and they had to listen to the description of exactly how little bread and butter she ate for breakfast and how small a slice of mutton for dinner, as well as to see exhibitions of new caps and new work bags for her mother and herself, and Jane's offences rose again. They had music. Emma was obliged to play, and the thanks and praise which necessarily followed appeared to her an affectation of candour, an air of greatness, meaning only to show off in higher style her own very superior performance. She was, besides, which was the worst of all, so cold, so cautious. There was no getting at her real opinion. Wrapped up in a cloak of politeness, she seemed determined to hazard nothing. She was suspiciously reserved. If anything could be more, where all was most, she was more reserved on the subject of Weymouth and the Dixons than anything. Weymouth? Frank Churchill was at Weymouth. Interesting. She seemed bent on giving no real insight into Mr. Dixon's character, or her own value for his company, or opinion of the suitableness of the match. It was all general approbation and smoothness, nothing delineated or distinguished. It did her no service, however. Her caution was thrown away. Emma saw its artifice and returned to her first surmises. There probably was something more to conceal than her own performance. Mr. Dixon, perhaps, had been very near changing one friend for the other, or been fixed only to Miss Campbell for the sake of the future £12,000. The like reserve prevailed on other topics. She and Mr. Churchill had been at Weymouth at the same time. It was known that they were a little acquainted, but not a syllable of real information could Emma procure as to what he truly was. Was he handsome? She believed he was reckoned a very fine young man. Was he agreeable? He was generally thought so. Did he appear a sensible young man, a young man of information? At a watering place or in a common London acquaintance, it was difficult to decide on such points. Manners were all that could be safely judged of under a much longer knowledge than they had yet had of Mr. Churchill. She believed everybody found his manners pleasing. Emma could not forgive her for being so, little of a gossip. Emma could not forgive her for not spilling the tea and the beans at all. Vagueness. Emma doesn't like vagueness, but she doesn't like Mrs. Bates talking so much. Eternally. What did she say? Eternally talking. She doesn't like that either. She doesn't like too much or too little talking, Emma. Hard to please, one would say, even. Hope the microphone isn't too loud. I love this microphone, the look of it. It reminds me of that thing in Star Wars that he was using to, like, use the Schwartz, use the Force with the cap on, and he was like, pew, pew, and he was getting those little laser beams. Everybody say goodbye. Jane, your hat. Golly, Jane. This little shawl. Ugh. Okay, I'm going to read Bird by Bird. I know, there's so many books to read. I've got to read more books. Happy reading, everybody. I hope the day is beautiful. It's been beautiful. It's been beautiful here in Folsom, California. Okay, one quote. I know we were going to do a news segment about quotes, but I'm going to do a Jane Austen Wrecked My Life quote again. Oh, wait. Let's do Wordsworth. William Wordsworth. Wow. It's little nameless unremembered acts. Little nameless unremembered acts. This is from William Wordsworth. Wordsworth. The best portion of a good man's life is his little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love. There's a book called On Tyranny that I have in my Audible that I haven't started, but Vanessa Zoltan from Harry Potter and the Sacred Text talks about it. And On Tyranny, there's a part in it on small talk and how important small talk is, and how, like, battling tyranny is in the everyday small acts of small talk. And if somebody says, ugh, the weather, can you even believe it? And you say, I know, you now have something in common and you're getting rapport, and then you can talk about whatever you want, politics, whatever. But it's important to have that ability of small talk, and small talk is important. We should bring it back. Happy reading, everybody. Stay safe, be well. Ta-ta.